Я видел вот Нью-Йорк Таймс. Дайте, пожалуйста,
Нет,
микрофон.
давайте мы сначала дадим Синьхуа, а потом Нью-Йорк Таймс.
Да.
Добрый день, Владимир Владимирович. Здравствуйте, очень рад вам задавать вопрос.
This is my video update on this Thursday, midday, December the 14th. Let's talk about some news, and let's start things off with Hunter Biden. The U.S. president's son, he decided to set up a podium right across from the Capitol building, right across from the House. He set up a podium, and Hunter Biden, he decided, along with his legal team, that instead of speaking to House investigators behind closed doors, he's going to take his case to the American people, because that's what a true Renaissance man does. A true Renaissance man does not go to the powers that be. No, that is not what a Renaissance man does. A Renaissance man goes to the people. He speaks to the people, and that is what Hunter Biden decided to do on Wednesday. And Hunter Biden, he told the American people, he told the world, and I quote, "Let me state as clearly as I can, my father was not financially involved in my business, not as a practicing lawyer, not as a board member of Burisma, not in my partnership with a Chinese private businessman, not in my investments at home nor abroad, and certainly not as an artist." I love the fact that he put in there his whole art thing. Boy, that's how you know that that they were trading favors for selling his artwork. The fact that he threw in the paintings, that's how you know that if you wanted access to the Biden White House, you had to buy one of Hunter Biden's paintings for like $500,000. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up. I don't know. I don't know if that was the case. I'm sure that wasn't the case. I'm sure that those paintings are worth $500,000. I know a little bit about art, and I can tell you that when I see those paintings from Hunter Biden, there's no doubt that they're worth $500,000, maybe even more, maybe worth $1 million. I don't think I've seen that type of art since, I don't know. I don't even know, man. Monet, Manet, Picasso. I don't know. It's beautiful stuff that Hunter creates, but he's a Renaissance man. He's a Renaissance man. He's probably the greatest artist of our time. He's probably one of the greatest authors of our time. An amazing storyteller, a chemist, mixing up stuff, a real estate investor, a venture capitalist, an energy, natural gas expert, an expert on everything Ukraine, and an expert on everything Russia. He's Hunter Biden, a lawyer. He's also a lawyer, an accomplished lawyer as well. An expert on China. A Renaissance man. And yesterday he told the House, "I'm not going to come and speak to you behind closed doors. I'm going to speak openly to the American people. And the American people are going to listen to what I have to say. And so Hunter Biden, he cleared the air. He made it crystal clear that his father, President Joe Bidenopoulos, Greece's favorite son, had nothing, absolutely nothing, zero, zilch, nada, nichevo, nothing, nothing to do with Hunter Biden's investments or his artistic endeavors. Absolutely nothing to do with any of it. Not Burisma, not firing the prosecutor in Ukraine, or else you're not going to get the $1 billion. None of it. Hunter had nothing to do with any of it. Not Burisma, not CFC in China, none of it. President Biden had nothing to do with it. Then Vice President Biden had nothing to do with Hunter's business dealings. And I told Poroshenko, you better fire that prosecutor or else you're not going to get the $1 billion. And son of a gun, they fired that prosecutor. Remember that Biden video? Who would have ever thought that that $1 billion that Biden held back from Poroshenko, if Shokin, the prosecutor, was not fired, who coincidentally was investigating Burisma, but Biden had nothing to do with Hunter's business dealings. Anyway, the prosecutor who was investigating Burisma, the company where Hunter was on the board, as well as some other people like Devin Archer and guys like that. But who would have ever thought that $1 billion given to Poroshenko and to Ukraine would turn into $300 billion going to Ukraine? My God, who would have ever called that one? And now you know why Biden is president. Now you know why Biden is president and why he's loved by BlackRock and Monsanto and all of these guys and the MIC companies, because Biden took $1 billion and he turned it into $300 billion. That's why Biden is loved. So that was Hunter. That was what Hunter said. And when Hunter was done, we got a vote in the House, and the Biden impeachment inquiry was authorized. It is official. We have an official Biden impeachment inquiry. From Zero Hedge, the House on Wednesday approved the launch of a formal impeachment probe into President Biden, just hours after Hunter Biden ditched congressional testimony on Capitol Hill. Formalizing the impeachment process will grant Congress additional power by improving the likelihood that a court will authorize access to grand jury materials, as well as boosting the chances that Republicans will be able to overcome objections such as executive privilege. And Jim Jordan, House Judiciary Committee Chairman, he said, and I quote, he, in reference to Hunter, was just across the way at the Capitol. You'd think he could have come here and sat for questions. You'd think, but that's not what a Renaissance man does, Jim Jordan. He does not speak to the House behind closed doors. He needs everything open. He needs everything public. A Renaissance man makes his case to the people, and the people, the American people, decide Hunter Biden's fate. That is what a Renaissance man does. That is the tradition of Renaissance men of the past, of Renaissance men like Sir Isaac Newton or Leonardo da Vinci or Leonardo DiCaprio. That is what Renaissance men do. Mr. Jim Jordan. Oh boy. DiCaprio, Titanic. Titanic. I am the king of the world. So Zero Hedge, they reported that the New York Times They messed around. They messed around with Hunter Biden's quote from the statement that he gave. The New York Times, the Zero Hedge says the New York Times doctors Hunter Biden's quote about Joe Biden's financial involvement in business dealings. The New York Times has doctored Hunter Biden's quote about his father being involved in his business dealings, as one does if you're an establishment mouthpiece. In the original quote, Hunter said, "Let me state as clearly as I can, my father was not financially involved in my business." And the New York Times chose misinformation instead, according to Zero Hedge, alleging Hunter said, and I quote, "Let me state as clearly as I can, my father was not involved in my business," omitting the enormously significant financially qualifier. Yep, a little bit of misdirection from the New York Times. Not the first time the New York Times has done such a thing, but I'm sure it was an honest mistake from the New York Times, and I'm positive that they'll correct that mistake, leaving out the word financially, the qualifier financially. "My father was not financially involved in my business." That is the correct quote. And that's probably true. That's probably true. I read a comment somewhere. I don't know where I read this comment, but someone said that what Hunter said is actually very true. My father was not financially involved in my business, because what was really going on is Hunter was involved in his father's business. I don't know. I'm sure that President Biden was not involved in any of Hunter's stuff. I'm positive of it. I'm 100% positive of it. I'm just joking around, everybody. I'm sure that everything that Hunter said yesterday is true and accurate. Hunter would never ever lie, would he? Hunter Biden, no chance that he would ever lie. No chance. Anyway, that was Hunter Biden. That was the big news yesterday. We have an impeachment inquiry. It's official. So let's see where this thing goes, and let's see how it affects the 2024 election. So we have a very big meeting taking place today and tomorrow, I believe, and I think it's going to take up the next 2 days, and that is a meeting between the European Union member states, and they are going to decide on the fate of 50 billion euros in funding to the Elensky regime, and they are going to decide on the fate of fast-tracking EU accession talks, specifically for Ukraine, and I also believe for Moldova. Georgia and Bosnia, they're not going to get fast-tracked. They're getting slow-tracked into the European Union. Bosnia and Georgia, they're not that important, unless they start some sort of conflict with Russia. If you start a conflict with Russia, then you get fast-tracked. But Moldova and definitely Ukraine, they're slated to be fast-tracked into the European Union. But we have some problems, because we have some EU member states which are not so hot on the idea of giving 50 billion to Ukraine, especially because Ukraine is losing the conflict and losing it very, very bad. And they're not so hot on the idea of Ukraine becoming a member of the European Union. And those countries are Hungary, of course, and then we also have Slovakia, and we also have Austria as well. And maybe even the Netherlands, who knows? I've read reports that Geert Wilders' government would not be so hot on the idea of giving money over to the Elensky regime. But Politico is reporting that there is indeed Ukraine fatigue, and it's a big risk for the 50 billion and for the accession of Ukraine into the European Union. Politico writes, Europe's true beliefs on Ukraine are put to the test Hungary and Ukraine fatigue risk undermining as long as it takes vow. Yeah, as long as it takes vow. I love it. As long as it takes, not anymore. It's as long as we can. We've had a narrative shift. It was announced yesterday by Biden. It's no longer as long as it takes. It's as long as we can. Oh no, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait 1 second. Here is the first sentence from this Politico article. The very first sentence. Brussels, dash, as long as it takes, question mark, or as long as we feel like it, question mark. Huh. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. So it's not as long as it takes. That's done. It's not as long as it takes. Biden said as long as we can. But now Politico is saying, as long as we feel like it, question mark. As long as we feel like it. Okay. We have a double narrative shift. A double narrative shift. So Trudeau, he got the script delivered to him yesterday. And it says as long as we can. So Trudeau, I'm sure he was up all night practicing his lines, because he was a drama teacher, right? Drama instructor, drama teacher, actor, thespian. Trudeau was like, practicing in his living room. Let me be clear. We will support Ukraine for as long as it takes. Oh, damn it. Let me try it again. Take two. Let me be clear. We will support Ukraine for as long as we can. Perfect. I nailed it. On the second take. And then there's like a knock on the door. Knock, knock. Trudeau's like, yes, come in. Mr. Prime Minister, we have an updated script. An updated script? Give it to me. As long as we feel like it. Oh, interesting. Very interesting. As long as we can, as long as we feel like it. What would a method actor do? What would Bobby De Niro do? How would Bobby De Niro approach this? Let me be clear. We will support Ukraine for as long as we can, or as long as we feel like it. Nah. I don't like that. We will support Ukraine for as long as we can, or as long as we feel like it. Yeah, I like that. It's got some taxi driver oomph to it. As long as we feel like it. Okay, so political rights. Doubts are on the rise, said one EU official who, like the others quoted, was granted anonymity to speak candidly. How desperate is the situation on the battlefield? How much more money will we pour into the black hole? Populists across Europe will ride this wave in the coming months. End quote. How desperate is the situation on the battlefield? I can answer that. Ukraine lost. It's over. How much more money will we pour into the black hole? I can answer that as well, Mr. Anonymous EU official. You're going to pour all the money that you have left, and then some, and then you're going to print more money, and you're going to bankrupt and sink the entire European Union. That's the answer to your question. That is the answer to your question, Mr. Anonymous EU official. Now, Ursula said this, according to Politico. Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said on Wednesday that now is the time to demonstrate what it means to support Ukraine for as long as it takes. Ukraine is not only fighting against the invader, but for Europe. Joining our family will be Ukraine's ultimate victory. End quote. First of all, Ursula, you haven't gotten the updated script, have you? Because you're saying for as long as it takes. As long as we can, or as long as we feel like it. That's the updated script. As long as we can, or as long as we feel like it. Anyway, Ursula, she probably hasn't gotten the updated script, but she's saying that the EU needs to support Ukraine because it will be Ukraine's ultimate victory. Joining the EU family will be Ukraine's ultimate victory. I predicted this 2 days ago. Did I not predict this? Ursula, I said 2 days ago, it. Ursula has got that script. She's got that speech right there on her desk, and she needs the approval for the accession talks for Ukraine. She needs that approval because she wants to give that speech. She wants to give that victory speech because she has nothing else. The EU and the collective West has been defeated by Russia across the board, economically, militarily, support around the world, you name it, diplomatically, you name it. Russia has defeated the collective West in a big, big way. And so the only thing that the EU has left is trying to get Ukraine into the European Union, whatever that even means, whatever Ukraine will even be when all of this is said and done. So she needs to give that speech. She needs to get in front of the people. She needs to approach the podium, and she needs to say that Ukraine joining the European Union family is victory, victory, victory. And Russia's economy is in tatters, tatters. I think it's in tatters. Maybe it's not so much in tatters. Maybe it's 3.5% growth, but who's counting? Who's counting? So she needs that victory speech. She needs it really, really bad. And Politico, they also say this. They also say this in the article. The decision to open the door to the EU is no less important as spiritual sustenance, said Ian Bond of the Center for European Reform. Ian Bond. The signal that you send by starting talks is that you are now on a train which is going towards a destination. If the Hungarians bar the door of the carriage and say you are not getting in, this is psychologically a blow to the Ukrainians, end quote. That's from Bond, Ian Bond. We're on a train. We're on the crazy train, as Ozzy Osbourne sang about. We're going off the rails of the crazy train. That's where the EU is heading. Man, that is where the EU is heading. They are on the crazy train. Ozzy Osbourne said it best. The Guardian, they're reporting that the European Commission unlocks 10 billion euros for Hungary despite criticism from MEPs. So it looks like Hungary's going to get 10 billion. It's owed a total of 29 or 30 billion that the EU is trying to steal from Hungary. But they're going to give Hungary 10 billion if Hungary votes yes for the 50 billion to be given to the Elensky regime. That's the trade-off. And while we are on the subject of Hungary, Elensky, he revealed what he told Orban in Argentina. This is according to Elensky. This is what he told Orban. Quote, I asked him to tell me one reason, not 3, 5, 10. Tell me one reason as to why talks should begin, Elensky said at a press conference in Oslo. I'm waiting for an answer. So Elensky went to Norway. By the way, Norway said they're going to give something like 1 billion in weapons and money and assistance to Ukraine, something like 1 billion, all of it added up. And Elensky, when he was in Oslo, he revealed what he told Orban in Argentina during the inauguration of Javier Milei. I asked Orban, tell me one reason, not 3, not 5, not 10. Tell me one reason as to why you don't want to give me money. Why don't you want to give me money? Tell me one reason. Just one. Just give me one reason. Well, you don't want to give me money. I don't understand. I buy many homes. Maybe I buy a home in Budapest. You give me money, maybe I buy a home in Budapest. It's win-win. One reason. I can name like 100 reasons why Ukraine should not be allowed into the EU, but let's not even go there. We know why Ukraine is being allowed into the EU. We know exactly why. They fulfill none of the requirements to enter the European Union. Zero, zilch, nada, nichevo, nothing. They don't fill any of the financial, human rights, economic, anything structural. They don't fulfill any of the requirements. But the one overriding requirement to enter the nightclub, the closing down nightclub of the European Union is: do you hate Russia? Are you willing to start a war with Russia? If you answer yes, then come on into the nightclub. Come on in. Doors open. Come on in. Let me give you your stamp right here. Bars over there. And enjoy yourself. That's the requirement to enter the European Union. How much do you hate Russia? Are you willing to start a war with Russia? If the answer is yes, you're in. You're into the EU. So the Wall Street Journal, they picked up. How am I doing on time here? All right, the Wall Street Journal, they picked up on the CNN article, which claimed that 87% of Russia's army has been decimated by the military juggernaut known as Zaluzhny, known as the NATO proxy Ukraine military. That was the article from CNN. And then the Wall Street Journal, they picked up on this article, and they have the title, Russia lost almost 90% of its pre-war army, U.S. intelligence says. The declassified estimate says 315,000 personnel have been killed or injured in Ukraine. So it's not 87%. Now it's almost 90%. You see the manipulation? Almost 90%. 87% plus 3. Or if you're Annalena Baerbock, it's 87% plus 13. If you're doing Annalena Baerbock math. But yeah, it's almost 90%. Now next week, NBC is going to run an article saying that Russia has lost almost 97% of its military, of its pre-war army. And then the week after that, the New York Times, they're going to run an article with the title, Russia has lost almost 99.9999999% of its pre-war army, U.S. intel says. No, but this is real news. This isn't fake news. This isn't misinformation. This isn't propaganda. This is real news. And a lot of people have actually believed this article. A lot of people are actually buying into this article. Oh, boy. So Russia is now fighting with 45,000 troops, right? 315,000 personnel have been killed. And I think the article said that Russia had a military of 360,000. Something like that. So Russia's fighting with 45,000 troops. Of course, the article says that Russia has mobilized and replenished and conscripted, and that's why Russia has been able to hold off the juggernaut, the military juggernaut that is Zaluzhny. The Kiev Post, they picked up on this article and they ran the title, Russia lost 90% of its pre-war army, military modernization set back 18 years. U.S. intel says 18 years. Wow. 18 years. So, you know, if Russia is in that type of military state, if things are in tatters, if Russia is in the tatterverse when it comes to the military, then, you know, I'll say it over and over again. How come NATO just doesn't roll their tanks towards Moscow? You know, if Russia's lost 315,000 troops in Ukraine, and they've had to now add another 315,000 troops in order to just prevent the Elensky regime from marching all the way to Rostov-on-Don, then that would mean that Russia's position inside of Russia its defenses inside of Russia have been greatly weakened, which would mean a NATO military of 300,000, 400,000 would easily be able to roll right into Moscow. Because what would Russia do? If you're Putin, what do? You've already lost 300,000 plus men in Ukraine. You've had to commit another 300,000 plus men into Ukraine. You've weakened your whole Western front. You know, all of your defenses towards the bordering NATO nations has been weakened. What do? If NATO attacks you, you're screwed, man. You're screwed. You've got military committed to Ukraine. You're weak across your border with NATO, and you're in big trouble. Let me make it really simple. If this article was even half accurate, there would be no Putin government. It's that simple. Putin would have been removed, and there would have been a real hardliner in place of Putin. Like, we're talking a hardliner in the Kremlin, and that hardliner would have, I don't even want to think about what the hardliner would have done to Ukraine. That's what would have happened. It's that simple. If this report was even remotely true, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that this report was dropped at the same time that Elensky was in D.C., and the whole thing is all about trying to con members of the House and of the Senate into approving $61 billion for Ukraine. That's all this report was. It was some declassified think tank document that they put together in an afternoon, and they decided to release it to the media at the same exact time that Elensky was in D.C. in order to try and persuade and push and con Congress into approving $61 billion for Elensky. That's all this is. That is all this is. If anyone wants to find Russian casualties, about ballpark the casualties, all you have to do is go to the Media Zona BBC website page, where they've been calculating the casualties. They've been trying to calculate the casualties from the beginning of the special military operation, from about the beginning of the special military operation. I'm not saying it's exactly accurate. Maybe it's a little less, maybe it's a little bit more, but it's fairly in the vicinity of where I think any logical, semi-intelligent human being would realize where the Russian casualties are, given the way that Russia has fought this war, which is not even as a war, as a special military operation. Russia has been very conservative. They've been very risk averse. They've let the Ukraine military come to them, and they haven't really gone on any big arrow offensives. They've dug in and they've let the Ukraine military just be on the offensive. It's Ukraine that has been on the offensive, if you think about it, the whole year and a half. And so the Russian casualties are very, very low, which is why Putin's approval rating is very, very high. Because the people of Russia understand that while the number that Media Zona and the BBC, and by the way, the BBC absolutely despises Russia, it's UK state media, so they have no interest in trying to present low numbers. But if the Russian people realize that what Putin has been doing and he has been fighting an effective special military operation, and he spent very little on the special military operation, and he's managed to accomplish quite a lot. I mean, he's defeated a NATO proxy 3 times. He's defeated NATO proxy army 3 times. He's demilitarized and bankrupted most of Europe. He's almost demilitarized the United States. Even the United States is panicking about their military stockpiles. And he's done that on a very, very conservative, with a very conservative approach. That is why Putin's approval numbers are at 80%. I'm not saying that the casualties that Russia has suffered and the casualties that Ukraine has suffered, but the casualties that Russia has suffered, while the number that Media Zona gives, and this is ballpark, is around 38,000. It's a horrific number, but it's not 10 times that, which is what CNN and the Wall Street Journal are claiming it is. Now, the fact that they've put that number out there, CNN and the Wall Street Journal, to me, tells me that those are Ukraine's casualties. Remember, it's always projection when talking about the collective West. So when the collective West says that Russia has suffered 315,000 casualties, they're projecting. That noise, by the way, is a car wash right across the street. That's what that noise is. So here's a tweet from Ilbanese. Quote, Russia has lost 90% of its pre-war army. It's all over the MSM today. And Putin's army was set back 18 years. Meanwhile, Biden and others state that if Russia wins in Ukraine, NATO countries are next. I don't get it, honestly. Exactly. So they've been telling us that NATO countries are at risk because once Ukraine is defeated, then Putin's going to take his army and go into NATO. But now they're telling us that Russia has lost 90% of its pre-war army. Which one is it? If that's the case, then I don't see why NATO would be worried if in Ukraine Russia has lost 90% of its pre-war army. That means that the Russian military is in a very, very bad state. So NATO has nothing to worry about. So Elensky, there's no reason to give Elensky 61 billion. I mean, it's their whole narratives. All their narratives are just completely twisted and tangled up. Anyway, Karine Jean-Pierre, she told the press yesterday, the White House spokesperson, she told the press yesterday that the U.S. has only $1 billion left for Ukraine. So $1 billion is left. Approximately 96% of replenishment funding has already been used, and the Department of Defense is preparing to allocate the remaining 4% this month. I don't see what the problem is. If 90% of Russia's pre-war army has been defeated and Russia's military is in tatters, I think 1 billion is more than enough to finish off the remaining 10%. And whatever other military Russia has built up in the last year and a half. What's the problem? I don't see a problem. Well, why should you give 61 billion to Elensky? It seems like everything is under control, Karine Jean-Pierre, if you go off of the Wall Street Journal and the CNN's reporting. Biden tweeted out, if Congress breaks for holiday recess before passing supplemental funding for Ukraine, they'd be giving Putin the greatest gift he could ever hope for. I'm calling on them to do the right thing. Stand with Ukraine. So Biden wants Congress to not go on recess, to not break for recess. Stick around and give 61 billion to the Elensky regime. So Ukraine can finish off the remaining 10% of Russia's army. And then finish off, I imagine, whatever military Russia has built over the past year and a half. Shouldn't be too hard. If Ukraine did it, then I imagine NATO could easily dismantle the remaining Russian army, right? Anyway, that's the tweet from Bidenopolis. Let's do a couple of clown worlds and we'll wrap this video up. From Bulgaria, the monument to its World War II liberation from the mustache man is being dismantled. Moscow slams the removal of the Red Army statue in Bulgaria's capital, Sofia, as rehabilitation of Nazism. Yeah, they're dismantling a statue to the World War II heroes. And Bulgaria was liberated by Russia. But nope, they're going to dismantle the statue to heroes from World War II because they want to change history, or they want to cancel history. That's why they're doing it. And from what I understand, the government in Bulgaria was saying that the statue is in a bad state and it has cracks and it has to be fixed up. And then once it's fixed up, it's going to be put in a museum, in like the National Museum. But like the National Museum has said, we received a request for this statue, so we're not gonna hold this statue. And there's all these lies now in the Bulgarian government because, from what I understand, the Bulgarian government just doesn't want to tell the people of Bulgaria, many of which are outraged at the fact that this statue is being dismantled. They don't want to tell the people of Bulgaria that we're dismantling the statue because our EU, NATO, US rulers, they're ordering us to dismantle this statue, right? They don't want to say that because the EU, they want to cancel any monuments which document World War II and the defeat of the Nazis by the Soviet Red Army. They want to cancel all of that stuff. Oh boy, so that's what's happening in Bulgaria. Very, very sad to see, but very expected to see. Very expected to see. This is the EU's approach to this, what is it, postmodernist world that they want to usher in, this globalist, neoliberal, postmodernist, year zero, no history world that they want to give us. Digital currency and surveillance state, and the EU. The EU is our religious sustenance. Isn't that what Ian Bond said? The EU is our new religion. The EU is our new history. Everything starts from today going forward. Forget about your past and your history and honoring your history. The only people now left to honor are Biden, Ursula, and Jungle Joseph. So let's do one more quick clown world, and it has to do with Elensky. When he met Joe Biden, he gave Biden a hug. I didn't notice that he gave Bidenopolis a hug. And when Elensky was in Norway, he gave the prime minister a hug when he was in Oslo as well. and then I think when he met the prime minister's wife, I think that's the prime minister's wife in the video. When he met the prime minister's wife, Elensky shook her hand. I don't get it. I don't get it. All the guys love to hug Elensky. All the girls, they shake his hand. It's like Ursula, Borrell, Macron, Duda, and Trudeau. They traveled to Kiev, and Zelensky, he hugs Trudeau, he hugs Duda, he hugs Macron, he hugs Borrell, and then when he gets to Ursula, it's like he shakes her hand. What is that cologne, man? What is that cologne, Elensky? You got to package that stuff. You got to package, market it, sell it, man. I could buy you some more homes. Elensky number 5. You want to attract many men? Elensky number 5. Anyway, that's the video, everybody. TheDuran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and Twitter X. And go to the Duran shop. 10% off. Use the code TheDuran20. Take care.